Hello, hi Soham. Welcome to the Curious Show, the show where we talk about the future of people and other curious things in the people space. How are you doing?
Hi, Ranak. Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. See, we've known each other a long time, but let's talk about perspective for the people listening in. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, I'm Soham and I have been a techno-functional consultant for the last 13 years. Uh, I started off my journey with uh, IT consulting space, worked with companies like TCS and Accenture. Post that for 2.5 years, I ran my own company in the recruitment space primarily. And then after that, I've been part of an organization called Darwinbox, which is an end-to-end HRMS platform. And for the last 6 years, I've been working there. Currently, I head the delivery in the India geography for Darwinbox.
Cool. So that's a long time in the intersection of people and technology, and that's where so we wanted to just talk about you with your vast experience in this space. Given the last what 6 7 years, how have you seen like whole people function evolve, the whole paradigm shift in the people function, and especially given that you have so much context in how technology plays a role in that. How have you seen that basically in the last 6 7 years of your life?
So, uh, there has been a shift in terms of how the overall HR function or the people function is viewed within the organization as well as from outside the organization. So, HR primarily or the people function primarily was looked at as a support function or as an enablement function, at least when I started out in my professional career. Especially, I mean, gradually over the last 3 years or so, uh, there has been, uh, I mean, pronounced shift in that uh, visibility and in the way the HR function is perceived. People have started looking at HR more from a strategic function or as a business partnering function rather than just as a enablement function. And there are a lot of critical decisions that HR play a interesting part in, and they contribute a lot to the overall strategy and direction of the organization. And talent, specifically in the entire HR piece, plays a major part in how the organizational journey or the organizational vision is perceived and driven. Right. So, majorly from a talent acquisition and talent management point of view, how HR is perceived, that has changed over the last 3 4 years, I would say.
But what's changed? Like, what have you seen? Let's say when you started 6 7 years back, you were consulting with clients, and today,
Hmm, hmm.
what's that shift that you've seen?
Right. So, uh, when I mean, at least I would say back in 2016, 17, 18, it was business basis, business needs that used to give the requirement of talent, right? Uh, Today, it is more scientifically derived, I would say, and I it has not happened across all organizations, but more mature organizations has made that shift where uh, the fitment of talent is derived from the nature of business that they're doing, which means there are overall competencies and skill frameworks that are drawn out. Basis those frameworks, fitment of people in those roles are defined, and basis the fitment, people are actually fitted into the roles. Earlier, the primary shift, the primary focus, not the shift, was around people, which was not very scientific in nature. And in fact, when I was a recruiter, I used to get requests such as, give me a person who is who is very similar to X. X would be a person. Instead of the job description, it would be match this person or find me another person who is similar to X. Right? That sort of a conversation has stopped a lot in most mature companies, right? Where it is not uh, critical talent is no longer looked at individuals, but it is all about critical roles. So that is one of the shifts where uh, the entire focus is now more science driven rather than more perception driven, right? And that is one of the things that has changed in terms of the quality of sourcing and the intelligence that is there in sourcing of people, in terms of how people are matched within the organization, fulfillment of people for various roles, and also the upskilling of people. All of these have become more scientifically driven rather than being perception oriented. So that is the kind of focus I mean, change in focus that has happened, and a lot of this can be attributed first to data, availability of data, and then the understanding of trends and patterns, and finally, in the last couple of years, we are seeing a lot of generative AI coming into the fold, and that also has contributed to this particular paradigm shift.
But is it largely because of technology that all of this is even possible, or was it like a mindset shift plus technology, availability of technology that's led to this?
So, in my opinion, the COVID-19 pandemic had a big role to play in this, right? Where people could not really rely just on human interaction and understanding people. Like uh, business leaders, for that matter, ran their businesses without having physically interacted with their critical leads or team members, right? So that is where they felt that it is not the person specifically who is driving the business, but certain qualities or certain characteristics or personality traits within the person that is critical to operate in that role. And that is where the entire competency framework and the skills framework come into picture, right? The importance of skills and competencies for a particular job, people notice that more and more when the human interaction overall reduced. That definitely played a part. Also, the availability of data and the availability of processing big data and understanding certain trends, that also definitely played a part. Like back in 2016-17, big data was a huge, I mean, it was that in thing back then, right? We would process data, we would try to gather trends and all those things. And companies that were doing that, we used to think that okay, these companies are new age companies and all sorts of things, right? But by 2020, that became the norm. Like everybody had the power to process big data. Everybody had the power to draw out analytics basis what is happening in their own organization. Simple things like attrition analytics, right? What kind of roles are at risk? What kind of profiles are leaving the organization? What kind of uh, people are essentially sticking around in the company? So all of these trends, all of these analysis, we were able to drive both through technology enablement, also through uh, I mean, as I said, the mind shift, these patterns started emerging. And once these patterns started emerging, people also started valuing the insights and inputs that these were giving. And that is where HR from a fulfillment function or an enablement function started as a uh, started becoming as a strategic function where HR was giving the input, saying, this is the trend in your particular business. These are the kind of people who are being successful, basis data, and these are the people who are sticking around and making your line of business more successful. So why don't you go ahead and try to hire these sort of people, people with a certain success profile, rather than someone who is operating, who might be an exception to that trend, who might be an outlier to that entire analysis that has been drawn out, and maybe uh, by fluke that person was a success. I mean, a simple example, if I have to draw an anecdote, is my own example. So, in the current organization that I work in, I am an outlier in terms of the success profiles. Right, I come from a very different background from the people who are generally successful in the current profile that I'm working in. So if we continue to hire people of my background and my profile, I do not think we would be that successful in terms of running the business. And that is where we relied a lot on data in terms of what are the kind of people that are becoming successful rather than trying to emulate a particular person or an individual for fulfilling a particular role. And that obviously technology and the computing power, increase in computing power, all of these have played a pivotal part in this paradigm shift. But of course, I mean, people's mindset and people's understanding of uh, and the people services and HR as a science, that has definitely played a part.
Got it. But everything you just said, Soham, is that sounds costly and in investment need of a lot of investment. Have you seen this very democratized, smaller companies doing this, or this is mostly large industries with a lot of financial muscle and manpower muscle who are doing this?
No, so not everything is very costly, and today especially, I would not say back in 2019, 2018, but today there are a lot of tools in the, I mean, in the market, in the internet, which are free of cost. And again, when you talk about running HR scientifically, so there is a brilliant lecture by Ashwath Damodaran, who is a Harvard University professor, who talks about the life cycle of companies, right? So, I mean, companies need to behave their age, right? A early stage startup who is working in a seed capital investment kind of stage, right, need not get into such scientifically driven people function, right? And growing startup who is probably doing under a $50 million business need not again drive the people function scientifically. They should have the orientation to do that. They need not drive it in reality. But when you grow and when people form a major factor in how you're growing, that is where you need to make that shift. So early stage companies who are starting out might just rely on perception, might just rely on intuition, and might just rely on normal human knowledge to drive their businesses. But as
But
and when the human interaction between the top
data,
and the middle layers, sorry,
they can still keep data, they can still collect data.
yeah, absolutely, they can keep data. It is not important to draw these analysis,
Okay.
right? And you will not get meaningful analysis with, let's say, if you are running a company with 20 employees or 50 employees, you will not get anything meaningful. You at least need a base strength of 500 people to arrive at some conclusion that this is the trend. You need to have distinctive teams. You need to have distinctive demographics within the organization. You need to have different age groups of people within the organization. Uh, so once you have reached that critical mass, ideally 500 employees or above, that is when ideally you should make this paradigm shift. Below that, you would know, I mean, both from, as I said, intuition, perception, common sense, more importantly, you will be able to drive things. And this is not a 0 to 1 investment. It is more like a 1 to 10 or a 10 to 100 investment.
Got it. No, that's an interesting point. Let me use that as a segue into like, so you spoke of companies who've just started out, then you're growing.
Mhm.
Lot of times I hear this question that when is the right time for me to adopt technology from the people space, right? And this is mostly from young people, people managers, people partners, right? Who are what part of a company which is, let's say, 30, 40 people strong, but they're growing, right? They're getting the series A. Is there like a blueprint or best practices that you've seen at various stages of evolution or journey of a company when you should start thinking of enabling technology or bringing in tech tools for the people function, and what would they be? Like, what typically works at which stage of a company's evolution and journey?
So, see, the equation is simple. Uh, It is, it, and any tech decision should be driven by return on investment. That's the bottom line. That's the baseline decision point. Now, if whatever tool you are bringing in, and by the way, when we talk about technology in some form or the other, you are inadvertently using that. Like even if you're using Microsoft Excel, that is also technology.
Mhm.
Now, see, let's say you are a 20-member organization and you need to hire a VP of engineering or something like that. Now, without any sort of technology, you would end up spending 3 months to hire 3 months of, let's say, someone who is a mid-level recruiter whose per man day rate is, let's say, $100 uh, to hire that person. Now, now you spend 3 months of time to hire that person. Do you have, first of all, the time of 3 months to hire that person? What is the cost that you're incurring by not hiring that person? Okay. And if you were to hire that person, let's say in 45 days using a tool, are you actually saving on cost? So 45 days into $100 of that recruiter, is the license fee more than that or less than that? If it is less than that, it is a clear cut answer that you should take that tool.
Mhm.
If the license fee is more than that, then you would think about the cost to your business by not having that tool. What are you losing out on? So it is, I mean, any tech decision should be based on return on investment rather than anything. And it is very dependent on the stage of the company, as I said, and what are the business objectives of that organization. So a company that is looking to grow quickly should definitely make tech investments. A company that is going after profitability should be more cautious about making tech investments, right? So it depends upon the orientation of the organization. It depends upon what are the objectives of that organization in that particular time frame.
But let's say we want to, let's say it's a company which is very tech forward, right? And the mandate has come that, hey, we should have tech, right? Because they're a very data driven company, right? The founders are very bent on technology, right? And the onus comes on the people partner, right? Who has, let's say, two, three people, team members. There'll always be a recruitment. There'll be one person doing salaries, one person doing everything else, right? Now the question comes that, hey, we need some tech tools. Now, what would he or she be doing, right? Would they first get an HRMS? Would they look at ATS? Let's say ATS is there, right? Because obviously hiring is happening. Beyond that, what should they be looking at? What's important when you are at 25, 30, and when you are at 100, when you're at 500?
Right. So when again, it is totally dependent upon the business objectives of the organization, right? Uh, let's say it's an organization which is a hardcore product organization and it would never scale up to be more than 100-member organization. You would not really need an HRMS per se, right? You would need more enablement tools like talent tools or OKR related tools. You would need productivity oriented tools, productivity measurement tools, and things like that. Right? So it all depends upon the business objectives of the organization in question. Now, as an organization, the first thing that you would need to do is hire people. If you already have an ATS, the next thing that you need to do is retain those people that you are hiring. How do you
Mhm,
retain those people? That is where the talent management suite comes into picture.
mhm,
I mean, platforms like Contextual, which is an extensive talent suite. So there are multiple variants of that, right? I mean, you have multiple organizations or multiple companies that come up in that space. So from defining OKRs to tracking productivity and tracking OKRs, all of those things. So from there to essentially defining career paths and integrated development plans, succession planning, identification of critical talent, all of those things. So it is important, I feel, very early on to define the overall competency framework and your role engine of the organization. So if you understand what are the different business or I mean job roles or the defined different business roles that exist in the organization, uh, it is relatively easier to have a pronounced talent strategy And once you have the talent strategy, you will automatically understand what is the tool that I must make an investment on. So if you have a talent strategy and you see that most of the folks in the organization are in an experience bracket of 8 to 10 years, then it becomes very important to define a career path for all of them and define integrated development plans for all of them and show them their progress in the organization. But let's say you have an organization uh, that is fairly young. Let's say the average tenure of, not tenure, average experience of your folks are 2 to 3 years. Uh, in that perspective, what becomes more important is something that creates excitement within those people. So, a rewards platform or a recognition platform, and then how do you enable them better in terms of how do you tie up with, let's say, salary advance platforms or other such things which generate excitement uh, within the uh, within the employee em- within the employees, that become more important. So again, that is also very contextual. Like, whom are you catering to? So as the people function, your primary customer is the people, right? So you have to be aware who your people are and what their primary objectives are. You have to be very connected with the generational outlook, right? At least in my organization, I am a very old person, both in terms of tenure as well as in terms of my age, right? So the way I would think, uh, 90% of the folks in our organization would not think that way. So you have to be very aware of what the generational outlook is. What do they really value? Is it work-life balance? Is it visibility? Is it fame? Whatever that is. So basis that, you would have to make a choice about what is the right tech tool for you, or right HR tool that should come in. Right? There is no single answer for this is the right tech tool for a company this age. It it there are a lot of factors that contribute to this.
It's an interesting point. With the generational outlook of the company, you should look at what is the HR tech tool that you take. Double click a little on that. What exactly does that mean?
So as I said, so see, let's say you have an organization, and let's say you are running a very new age marketing tech company where majority of the organization is in the age bracket of 23 to 28
Hmm.
currently, right? Will they value career progression so much? Not really. What they will value is visibility. How do you create their personal brands on the internet? How do you create the employees, the last mile employee, as brand ambassadors of the company? How do you establish the employee value proposition for them in terms of visibility? How do you essentially reward them or recognize them when they're doing a good job? Right? These are the things that this particular age group folks will value, right? Versus, let's say, a company that has an average age of somewhere around 30 to 35. Uh, they would value things around access to finance, right?
Right.
Because they are looking to procure, buy houses, they are looking to buy cars, they are looking to do a lot of things. They uh, would want more access to finance. So if you at that time, let's say, do a partnership with some platform like this or a platform like any salary advance platform, that would be valued, right? Or if you roll out a policy simply that you are giving out a salary advance, you don't need any partnership as such, right? So that would be valued. So
Mhm.
what is it that your employee values, your last mile employee values? That should be an input to what is the tool you're procuring. And of course, from a HR function, you also have to be cognizant about your business objectives. Now, let's say your business objective is to scale the current team from 100 people to 1,000 people within a year. Then, of course, you have to have a very solid ATS plus an HRMS also, right? But if that is not your business objective, let's say you are going to grow organically in terms of the number of people in the organization, that may not be a priority. Your main priority would be to retain the talent. And when you are looking at retaining talent, you obviously have to recognize the talent, you have to reward the talent, you have to look at the benefits that you're giving to the people. Uh, you also have to look at how do you make their lives simpler, right? And like make their life simpler, meaning let's say the people function. I mean, this is more administrative side. Let's say you're tying up with services like Ola, Uber, City Flow, whatever. You are making their life simpler. You are reducing their costs overall, right? So
Hmm.
those are the things that people will value, and the answer is not always on a tool. I mean, through a tool per se. It can be derived through a tool, but it is more on the initiative, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, the if you are not aware what uh, what your population, what your organization and people in the organization really value, the first thing you should do is get a survey tool. Right?
Hmm.
Understand your population. And a survey tool may not be a expensive thing like a Mercer employee engagement survey or something like that. It can be a simple survey monkey, a free subscription of survey monkey, or even a Google form or a Microsoft form, right?
Hmm.
And you can download all of these questions. They're available for free on the internet, right? All sorts of employee engagement survey questions. And you need to understand what the organization really needs from the people function. And once you have that intelligence, the decision about procuring a tool is rather simple. So, I mean,
Hmm.
to summarize, there are two aspects of it. One is the business objective of the organization, where you have to solve for that. And if the business objective is a specific thing, which is increase in manpower and henceforth, increase in revenue, which is derived from increase in manpower, then you need a certain direction and a certain set of tools, of course.
Hmm.
Versus, there are people driven tools also, which make the lives of your employees, existing employees, simpler and better. And that insight and that intelligence can be derived from employee engagement surveys. So, I mean, whatever the age of the company, I feel it is important to listen to your people. What most organizations fail to do, even small, I mean, early stage organizations or growth stage organizations, is listening to their employees. And like when you are a 10-member organization and the feedback that you used to get from your employees versus when you are a 50-member organization or a 100-member organization or a 500-member organization, the feedback would change drastically
Hmm.
because as a founder, you would have lost access to all your employees. Like when you were a 10-member organization, you would have access to all your 10 employees. When you're a 500-member organization, you would definitely not have access to all your employees. Or as the people function also, you would not have access to all your 500 employees. So it is very important to listen to all of them. And one of the proactive ways of listening is through employee engagement surveys or any sort of a mechanism where you get to listen to your employees.
Hmm. Got it. So let's say again, continuing this thread, right? Uh, we've decided on a bunch of tools. This is how I take at this point. I need this at this point. I need that, right? Is there like a best practices again with your? I'm sure you worked with hundreds of clients. Uh, on the other side, or from your side also, what is the best practices that you've seen, right? And let's talk about the other side, which is the people side. Somebody who's working in the people function, manager, whatever it is, can be part of the HR tech team, wants to implement. And I'm not saying any HRMS. I think HRMS is the largest one. So let's talk about that. What are the best practices that you've seen which work really well for a successful implementation, right? Because it's not just about bringing the tool in and getting it live. It's also about running it for years and ultimately getting data and etc etc, making it a success basically. What's the best practices you've seen that a person who's a part of the people function should do, like from inception till live and a year down that? What's worked best where you've seen the HR tools be really successful?
So the simple answer to that is defining the objectives or defining the success metrics, what that tool is supposed to do. Let's say you are bringing an ATS. Why would people bring an ATS? There are two reasons. One is increasing the quality of hire, or two is to reduce the turnaround time of hire. these can be two, I mean, of many other objectives, these can be the two primary objectives. You can also want to improve the candidate experience. That is also another piece. Uh, right. So it is important to define that objective. Like basically, you set up boundary conditions or you set up guiding principles of what are you trying to solve or do through that tool. Right. Let's say you are bringing in a recognition tool and your objective is to set up an employer branding through that. Then how you would operate that tool versus if you are looking at just employee rewards to that would be very different. When you are looking at building employer branding, you would look at LinkedIn, you would have to look at LinkedIn integrations or even Instagram integrations, whatever. So where on your company profile page you are mentioning employees and things like that, right? Where you are creating a mini brand of your employees through your company profile. Something a lot of new age companies have been doing, like I mean, a lot of SaaS companies essentially out of India, like Zoho does it very well, I would say, right? So again, as I said, it depends upon what is it that you're trying to achieve through that tool. If that is clear right from the onset, how you implement that tool and what are the configurations or functionalities that you put into that tool becomes a derivative of that, and automatically the adoption of that tool is high, and generally the return on investment on that tool is also significant,
So
right?
how do you define what is it the outcomes that you want? Is it a people driven? Is it the people function will be defining that or business?
So it's twofold, as I said. So any decision on that front is twofold. One should be derived from your business objective,
Mm, mm.
right? So and the other is by listening to your people, right?
Got it.
So business objective, if let's say the business objective is to, I mean, improve the employer branding, or rather, there's a business objective that you be certified by Great Place to Work, right? So obviously you have to improve employer branding, you have to draw in more talent, and so on. So all of these things are there. Similarly, if so, the challenge happens when the business objectives and the voice of people are contradicting, right? When the business objective is to, let's say, increase employer branding, and the voice of people is to, let's say, improve remuneration. That those are the conflicting situations that become challenging.
Mm.
But more often than not, that is not the case. Generally, you have synchronization between the two. Uh, so one set of outcome has to come from your business objective. Another set of outcome has to come from what you're listening from your people.
Got it. Got it. Um, okay. So to summarize, basically start with the identification of the problems. Um, it is twofold. One is from the business, one is from the people. And but what little go a little deeper. So once I have all of this, then I am bringing in the tech tool, and basically I'm checking off the boxes, right? Checking off
So
have I.
first is, as you rightly said, first is defining the problem statement. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming that you are already, I mean, before you look to bring in a tool, obviously you are aware of the problem statement. That is why you are
Mm,
even evaluating some tool, right?
mm,
If there was no problem statement, there is no question of a tool, right? So obviously there is a problem statement that exists. Uh, when you have established that this is my problem statement, now you have
mhm,
to define a success metric for solving that problem statement,
mhm,
right? Let's say my problem statement is I need to hire a lot of people in the next 2 years time frame. One of the success metrics, possible success metrics, can be the turnaround time for a hire. All right. Another success metric can be the reduction of attrition rate that I have currently. Right. So if I am retaining my people, naturally I would not have to refill those positions. Right. So automatically the load on my recruitment team goes down. So again, the two arms of talent acquisition and talent management, have to work hand in hand in this particular, in maintaining this strategy or in implementing this strategy, right? So, from the talent acquisition side, let's say your objective is to reduce the turnaround time, right? So, that is your guiding principle, or that is your North Star. That today to hire a person, I am taking, let's say, 3 months time, 90 days. I have to complete hiring a person in 30 days. That's your, that's your metric. Right now, you will automatically define processes and policies within the organization that cater to that North Star metric. Right? You will not define elaborate approval flows for releasing an offer letter. You will not define elaborate approval flows for even raising a manpower acquisition, right? Because that's a business need. Everybody recognizes that, and you have to trust your leaders to ask for the right manpower, right? And obviously, if you put contradicting processes versus outcome metrics, obviously it will not be a success. So that is why I said or use the term guiding principle. Whatever your success metric is, there should be guiding principles that are derived out of those success metrics, and whatever you define while implementing the tool in question must conform to those guiding principles, right? And once you conform to those guiding principles, automatically they feed into that success metric, right? And in all of these things, again, depending on the tool that you are bringing in, you would have to be open to understanding what the tool really does also, right? Let's say if you are bringing in a brilliant tool like a lever or a greenhouse or something like that, and you are only trying to solve for TAT, it will not work out. You have to understand what the tool's philosophy is, or what the tool's value proposition is also. Greenhouse or a lever's value proposition is around candidate experience. It is around recruiter experience. It is not so much about the TAT, or it is not so much about increasing efficiency. Of course, there would be marginal improvement in efficiency or productivity. All of those things would happen. But a simpler tool like a Hirecraft will do a better job in increasing efficiency rather than a greenhouse or a lever. Right?
Hmm.
So you have to choose the tool also according to your business need, or according to the problem that you're trying to solve, and according to the success metric that you have put forth for solving that problem. Right? So once you have done that, automatically all the other blocks, fit into place.
Hmm.
So while evaluating a tool, it becomes very important to understand what the tool is talking about itself. What the tool really says, it solves. Right? Where most people and most companies, uh, I mean, have bad experiences with product, when the tool's value proposition is not in sync with the, success metric that they have defined for their problem. That is where, the outcomes are not in sync. That is where people struggle with that product, and nobody's happy in that situation.
Understood. So define the problem statements, be very clear in what is the way you'll achieve those problem statements, and more importantly, take the
So
tool
yeah,
as a
if I have to
yeah.
summarize it stepwise, first is you have to be aware of the problem statement. Second is you have to define the North Star metric or the success metric of what would you consider that this problem has been solved when you reach what.
Hmm.
Right. Third are the guiding principles that you will abide by while reaching that North Star metric or that success metric. Fourth, in certain situations, if the organization is mature enough, you might have certain design principles. You might or
Hmm.
might not have. That is not that relevant, but you might have that. I will need to have so and so levels of approval, whatever. Those are certain principles that you abide by, right? Uh, so primarily understanding the problem, defining a North Star metric, defining certain guiding principles, then aligning your policies and practices to these three.
Hmm.
Uh, and you will definitely, choose the right tool as well and implement it also in the right way so that you get or reach those success matrices.
Got it. Got it. Again, another, I think, a double click on the same topic, right? See, over the last, what I've been on the people side now almost 6 7 years, on this side of the table, and I'm seeing that a lot of companies now are creating roles for people tech, right? So it's people tech and analytics, but
Mhm.
largely the people tech folks are the guys who are the custodians of any technology with respect to people. And typically, these are the guys who are in analytics also, because ultimately you're getting the data from these tools and you're using it to churn data, get insights. Now, and I'm seeing, it's good that I'm seeing a lot of young kids, young people also who have a bent of mind of technology, who love the people function, but feel that they'll be able to actually make more of a dent if they are in this people tech space. Right? It's a small niche space, but it's happening. There's a lot of interest that's been garnered here. Now, as somebody who's seen, people who, I'm sure you worked with hundreds of people who are in the people tech side, right? Who are the guys who are actually implementing the tools. What advice would you have, let's say, to a 22-year-old who's just fresh out of college, is probably an engineer, loves technology, but at the same time also loves people and numbers, right? And wants to break into the field and build a career in the people tech space. What advice would you have for this kid?
So, see, more than advice, I would say a reality check. Technology will always be an enabler. It will never be a driver.
Hmm.
Your problems have to be your driver. Technology will always be used to solve problems. Like, for example, AI will never replace the people function, or it will never replace jobs for that matter. Yes, it can take up certain mundane jobs and things like that. Right? So, technology, when you are looking at technology, it has to be looked at the lens of an enabler, right? What you need to be really passionate about is the problem solving aspect of it, be it a people problem, be it an organizational problem, whatever it is. So if you are really interested in people tech, you should have an understanding of technology, but more than that, you should have an understanding of people, right? If you have to solve for people function problems, you should understand people. You should like to interact with people. You should have the bent of mind to solve people's problems. Now, if that is not there and you are just interested in the technology side of things, and you are just interested um, in, let's say, something like a new age gen tool that has come in, you would be much better focused in high technology or high tech kind of areas which only concentrate on the technology. So be clear about what is it that drives you. Is it the people side of the things, or is it the technology side of the things? If it is to the technology side of the things, that technology will be applicable to various other fields. It just need not be the people function. It can be production function also. It can be the marketing function also. It can be finance also, right? So be aware first of all about what is it that really drives you. Once you are aware of that, I mean, you need to be. You need to be aligned that people really interest you, that really drive you. That really drives you. The fact that you are interacting with people, you are trying to solve for people's problems, that really drive you. Otherwise, obviously, you will just get irritated with working in this space, because ultimately you are going to solve for people's problems, right? uh, and third thing is, you should have a 2 year 5 year plan with you. Like, okay, today I want to do this, but in 3 years time. And what I mean by that is, would I want to be a specialist in this particular field and go more deep in this function, or would I want to grow in a more people management uh, people management side of things, right? Because most young people that I interact with are mostly confused about this. What helps is if there's a clarity about this, and I'm not saying as soon as you're out of college, let's say you've worked in an organization for a year or a couple of years, after that, you should get that clarity. If you are not getting that clarity, you should spend time or read up about different things to understand what really drives you again. So, a people management side of things, or growing your career in the people management side versus growing your career in an individual contributor kind of a motion or a career path. So, your career will grow in both the sides, but you have to be aware of what really drives you again on that front as well.
Got it. That's an interesting point on whether I want to be an individual contributor or I want to go into people management. Um, it's good that nowadays companies are looking both of them as a level playing field. Right? Previously, you used to think
Mhm.
that your growth is only if you're managing people. Right? There was a success metric of number of people. Your DRs was your success metric, which is wrong. How are you seeing that pan out? I mean, in your experience, companies are now getting okay with it, or is it still that my growth means I manage more and more people?
So again, it depends upon the organization and the life cycle stage that the organization is in.
Hmm.
So this concept of how successful I am is derived from the number of reportees that I have. You would see that in a declining company or a very legacy oriented company, a company that has been in existence for more than 50, 60 years,
Hmm.
right? You would not typically see that. Yes, those companies are also doing well today. I'm not saying, let's say, I mean, not Tata Motors or Tata Steel kind of company not doing well. Absolutely, they're doing well. But a company that is in a stable state or has matured into a certain stage, has a certain amount of market capitalization, for such a company to have that mindset is still okay. But even those companies are putting a lot of focus on uh, research, on innovation, on uh, I mean, the very fact of there can be subject matter experts, right?
Hmm.
So that focus or that paradigm shift has definitely happened, and this is not a new paradigm shift. And I would like to believe that this paradigm shift happened when IT services as a industry started out in India, and that is where people saw the need of subject matter experts. People saw the need of individual contributors. Uh, driving things up. And in consulting, it has been the norm from the time consulting has existed. Uh,
Hmm.
Individual contributors at the level of partners, not managing a team. It is common, right? And so in consulting, it's definitely a thing, and it has always been there. In other sides of businesses, in product organizations, in manufacturing organizations, for that matter. I mean, when I say product, I mean tech product organizations, or in other manufacturing organizations. Uh, Again, depending on the nature of the business, it hasn't been a need that much so far. But today, everybody recognizes that you have that need. Everybody
Hmm.
understands the value of innovation, and, uh, and people also understand that if they're not innovating, they are going out of business. And there have been so many case studies about this, right? Uh, so people understand the value of innovation, and when people understand the value of innovation, they understand the value of people growing both as a people manager as well as within a certain specialization, and doing great things out of that specialization. So, to tie back to the previous point, it helps if you have that clarity fairly early on in your career. And it is always okay to make that switch. I mean, as a 23-year-old or a 24-year-old, I can say that I want to grow as a people manager. And after 5 years of managing a team, I can say I no longer want to grow into a people manager because your focus is in life shift, right? Your priorities in life shift. So that is absolutely fine. But inherently, it is derived from your personality trait or your innate nature of who you are. Whether you want to be a people manager or you would want to be personally brilliant, right? So that is what you should recognize and understand fairly early on. If you do that, I mean, the chances of you uh, being more successful are higher.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, same. I think is what I tell people. It's just taste, do it, and you'll actually realize it. A lot of people say that I don't want to be a manager, but then they love it. Versus some who are like forced to become a manager, and they really hate it, and they say, "No, I just want to do it in my space." Cool. I have one question now. If I move into another topic, you touched on skills and competency frameworks quite a bit. For everyone listening in, what do you mean by skills? What do you mean by competency framework?
Okay. So competency essentially came into picture uh, I mean, it was introduced by the US Army during World War II, right? So before World War II, in the army, everybody was expected to do everything, right? During World War II, and who were army folks back then? They were basically farmers, peasants, and animal herders, ranchers, those kind of people, right? Who had very limited knowledge about handling weapons, about handling ammunition, and things like that. So naturally, certain people were good with certain things, right? Not everybody could fire a sniper rifle, and there were legendary stories about being famous snipers and things like that, right? So the US Army essentially defined a framework of what is each person's competency, or what is each role's competency, not person, sorry. What is what are first of all the roles in the army, right? There would be drivers, there would be radio men, there would be various other roles that would exist in the army. So, and again, in different divisions or different units, basically cavalry, infantry, there would be different requirements of different sorts of roles. Right? Once those roles were defined, they defined behavioral traits that uh, would fit into those roles, or that those would be relevant for those roles, right? Like for example, someone who needed to be a sniper or a marine sniper had to enjoy being alone for prolonged durations of time. That person ideally needed to be happy being alone by themselves for, I mean, for 2 days, 3 days, all by themselves. Otherwise, if that was a very, I mean, if a person who was very sociable wanted to be in that role, they would definitely be frustrated with that role, right? So that is where this entire concept of competency came into picture, where depending on the nature of what you were doing in the army, uh, certain behavioral characteristics were associated with competencies, and that is where the behavioral competencies came into picture, right? So that's the origin story of competency, and there are a lot of folks who have done a lot of research uh, around competency, uh, and inherently, competency is a measurement of your ability and your attitude that would enable you to do your job, right? Uh, Job to a certain level. Like again, there is something called proficiency level within a competency as well. So, uh, what enables you to do your job in terms of ability and what your attitude towards it, right? That would define, that is essentially what is competency. Now, if I have to give a simple example around competency, let's say riding a bicycle, right? Riding a bicycle. Now, what is riding a bicycle? Now, if I break into knowledge, skill, ability, and competency, uh, knowledge is I have read about riding a bicycle somewhere on books. I mean, in books, articles, whatever, internet. I've read about it. I understand what I need to do. Uh, okay, and that is knowledge. I have never done it in real life. When you actually do it in real life, right? Let's say you actually have ridden a bicycle and you have gone from point A to point B. Uh, in, let's say, normal situations or circumstances, that is your ability. You have done it. Uh, Skill is, let's say, you have ridden that bicycle with another person sitting behind you or in front of you, or you have ridden that bicycle with only one hand and you have carried something else on the other hand. That is a particular skill. Now, coming to competency, you are participating in a bicycle, what do you say, bicycle race, and you have the intent to be a winner in that, and you eventually end up being a winner in that bicycle race. That becomes a competency, because that's a combination of your ability to ride a bicycle, certain skills that you might have, and your attitude of wanting to win, or your attitude of wanting to compete and come out on top.
Okay.
So that is where this entire thing comes into picture in terms of, in very layman languages, that is what competency essentially um, stands for. Now, competencies in the people function or people side of things, again, there are uh, technical competencies, behavioral competencies. Technical competencies are competencies essentially that relate to that particular job role from a functional or a technology point, not technology, but from a, I mean, specifically a job related aspect,
Hmm.
right? It might be very domain specific. Like, for example, in steel manufacturing unit, it can be your ability to handle a blast furnace, right? How well you can keep your composure and handle a blast furnace, like operate a blast furnace. So that might be a technical competency. Or let's say in a tech function, uh, ability to
Coding something
deliver
language
code
skill.
on time or things like that. Yeah. Knowledge about language is a skill. Ability to turn around code in under pressure within certain durations of time, that is your competency. Uh, so yeah, that is how competencies play out. Now, again, in competencies, how do you measure it? You might have multiple levels of that. You can be a beginner, whatever. I mean, just like you have different levels in any video games, you would have levels in that particular competency as well. And that essentially derives uh, your career progression as well.
Got it. Cool. Let's segue into an interesting topic, which is the talk of the town these days, which is AI, right? And specifically generative AI that's happening today. Your Chat GPTs, Gemini, etc., all of it. It's been around for a while. It's not like it's new. It's been almost a year. Where have you, or today, how do you see this advancement in AI, and I'm speaking as is today, really helping the people function? First of all, is it even helping the people function? If so, what are the use cases that you've seen that someone can really use the generative AI today and just make their work, let's say, 2x, 3x, 1.5x better?
So there are two primary directions in which AI can contribute to the people function, and for that matter, any function in any organization. One is analyzing data, right? Earlier, without generative AI, you would essentially have to write code or machine learning code to essentially analyze any data set, any large data set, right? Today, that is translated to a speech or to a language input, right? So if I have a data set that covers that has my entire employee data set, and I have the date of joining, I have the date of leaving the organization, and I have the reason of leaving the organization, I can just give a simple prompt to something like Microsoft attrition trends for this data set. And so today you can do that in approximately 5 to 6 minutes. The same work, it is not that we couldn't do this work 2 3 years back. And generative AI has been there for a fairly long time, almost 10 years now. It has been there. Usage has started. I mean, mass scale usage has started over the last 1.5 2 years. Uh, People have started understanding it fairly now, more so because of the news and the marketing around it, and the sensationalization that is happening around it more than anything. So it does all those same things that I typically as a human being would do. It would draw a pivot first. It would then see what are the different, what are the top 2 3 categories in that pivot. Then try to apply my mind and derive some amount of, inference out of that pivot, right? So in the background, that is what exactly it is doing. So generative AI is simply, to speak simply, how our brain would look at or go about solving a problem statement. It just mimics that and it solves that problem statement. Can it eliminate uh, me as an individual? Not really. Me, as in, when I say me, I'm talking about someone who is drawing out these reports in the HR operations function. Not really. because you would still need to give inputs of what are the relevant data points. Because at least today, not so much inputs around what we should analyze exists in the market or in the internet. Once you derive or once you define what has to be analyzed, the analysis part of it can be done fairly well by generative AI. Right? That is one usage of generative AI where you draw out patterns and trends around your employee or candidate population, right? Or any other part of your people function for that matter. Right? You can also draw out trends, for example, for in terms of the reimbursement trends that are happening in the organization. So any sort of trends and analysis that can be done. That's one aspect. The other aspect is around solving for talent, right? So again, deriving the right job description basis the role, or arriving at the right job description starts from there. So when you have defined the role, even job evaluation study, if enough data exists about the business, uh, job evaluation studies used to be done or is still done today by large organizations like Mercer's, EY, PwC, all of these HR consulting firms do job evaluation studies, right? So job evaluation studies can be done by generative AI for that matter. Uh, Basis the job evaluation, defining the job description for those jobs, right? So through job evaluation, you first define the roles. Once the roles are defined, you then define the job description for each of those roles. Basis the job descriptions, you can automatically source for people who are a fit for that role, either internally or externally, right? And if you are sourcing for people internally, you can look at people who are, let's say, a 70% fit or a 60% fit, and define integrated development plans for those people so that they become a 90 or 90% plus fit for those jobs. So, both from talent acquisition as well as from talent management and retention and compensation and benefits point of view, AI has a lot of role to play. It does not eliminate the concepts that are, uh, I mean, the different functions of HR would have. It would just automate those concepts and reduce the turnaround time of the activities that you would typically do. So
Hmm.
inherently, a job evaluation study would take somewhere between 3 to 6 months in an organization. With something like a ChatGPT 4.0 or a Bing AI engine, you would definitely be able to do it within a month.
All of these are now being baked into the, let's say, HRMS or the talent management tools today. Have you seen it being baked in?
Slowly and steadily, yes. So the talent piece. So a lot of organizations in the HRMS space are investing heavily in generative AI in the talent space, more so from a talent acquisition point of view. Few organizations are doing it from a talent management point of view as well, where they are defining the entire skills ontology, defining the entire competency framework through AI, defining job descriptions and so on and so forth. What a lot of HR tech platforms, not just HRMSs, are investing on is doing intelligent sourcing, especially from the market, especially external sourcing. So basis the job description that is there, and basis job descriptions of similar profiles in other organizations, analyzing data that is there and giving the right fitment of candidates to organizations. So there's a concept called stack ranking. So stack ranking is essentially a machine learning concept where you are just analyzing data and giving the probability of a candidate being successful in a profile, right? So the accuracy of that has increased drastically with the advent of AI in this space, and a lot of companies are investing in that space, right? From ATSs to point solutions in just who are just doing the stack ranking to full-fledged HRMSs. Few HRMSs are definitely putting in investment in doing the full-scale talent management piece where they're not just sourcing from external sources, but because they have the data of internal talent also, they have that leverage of doing sourcing and stack ranking against internal fitments as well, or internal movements also, right? So that also is happening quite, I mean, quite a bit now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a big problem anyway. One thing that I just so I think about this quite a bit. How will the AI be able to get context, right? Like whenever we are hiring, there's some nuances and some, let's say, role related context, um, and also how will it handle CVs of people like us, right? We are not from the traditional field in which we have excelled in.
So
So it'll be a challenge.
series of people like us will be rejected. Let's be
Yeah.
very open and honest about it. So somebody who is looking to do a career switch, they don't have a chance in the AI world. It is completely eliminated.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, when it comes to the different context, interesting thing is, or the good thing about generative AI is, you can bake those in the prompts that you give. Right. So, for example, in the job description itself, you can. So, if you say the entire job description is a prompt for finding a candidate or for sourcing a candidate, in the job description itself, not as a visible prompt, but as a hidden prompt, you can say that look at people who are, let's say you have a success profile. Okay, you have defined a success profile. So you give that success profile as a background prompt for that particular job description. So context around that. So as much as you can say, the AI engine would be able to consume that. You want to say that you would want to hire someone who has exposure to US markets. All those things you can bake into the prompt. And that's the good thing about generative AI. So it's not a singular prompt. Like you can improve upon the prompt, or you can deliver the prompt basis the responses that you're getting. So let's say you gave a prompt and you got a list of 10 candidates, and you think that all of these 10 candidates are over and above your budget. So you say, okay, these candidates are fine, but find me similar candidates with possibly lesser experience, but within this particular budget. So
Mm.
the engine, even within a prompt, even within a conversation, basically, the AI engine learns what its counterpart is wanting from it. So that's the good part about generative AI is it has the intuitiveness to work as your partner, right? It is basically working as your personal assistant. Any generative AI tool effectively is working as your assistant, right? So like you would give uh, iterative prompts to your assistant. Similarly, you can give that AI engine iterative prompts, and it will understand. But yes, edge case understanding and outlier recognition and intelligence around which outlier can be a good fit, that capability, with time, I'm sure it will come in when generative AI has the ability to understand behavioral traits, and when more, let's say, when social media tools become accessible to AI, right? Or social media data, something what was done in Cambridge Analytica, right? When it becomes the norm, right? How when your social media behavior is also analyzed to essentially figure out whether you would. So it was used in a voting context. You can use that same context into hiring as well, right? Whether you would be a good fit in this organization. All of these things, when such data points are available, that also will be solved. But today, no. But there are a lot of questions around data privacy, ethics, and all of those things that will come into picture before that becomes a reality. Will it become a reality? Absolutely, yes, it will become a reality. But how soon? I don't know today. Uh, but yeah, that is the direction where AI is going in HR. Uh, and it is in a good way that it is impacting HR. Uh, so, again, to summarize, it is being used in two fronts. One is to analyze data and give out trends and patterns. Second is to understand, or produce better fitment of people in different jobs. right? Both internally and externally. That is what is essentially happening. The next step towards this, I mean, this is already happening. These two aspects are already happening. What should happen as a natural progression from here is defining career paths and career progression for people, or
Mm.
the other side of it, instead of an organization looking to search for people, the other side of things today which is missing is, as an individual, I want to find out which is the best organization for me to work in, where I would get the maximum out of my professional life. That piece is missing today. That piece will come out in the next 2 to 3 years, is what I feel.
Mm.
Like, I go into a Naukri and give a prompt that find the best job that will give me 10x salary increase in the next 5 years, right? So in the near future, that will happen.
Yeah, but the demand in India, may at least the demand supply mismatch will
No,
always.
I'm not talking about India. I'm talking about overall as a trend. In India, I mean, it might not be that effective because there is a huge gap in
Mm.
terms of the and supply versus demand, and that gap will reduce for sure. That gap will reduce. That gap in any case has reduced, but obviously it will take more time to figure that out. Uh, but overall, that will be something that will see a lot of things happening on that front.
Got it. Cool. So I think we've spoken about a lot of things, covering from AI, tech. One thing that I wanted, and let these be the closing thoughts, wanted to get your opinion on is, given that you've traversed India as well as a large part of Asia. Uh, Now we know a lot about India, but a lot of us don't know about and I'm talking of the people space in Asia. What have you seen, or have you even seen anything across your journeys in Asia uh, that you think we can actually learn from an Indian context and sort of bring it into our people world, our people practices, to just elevate ourselves? I'll start with one, but then over to you. I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised about the openness of menstrual leaves in Indonesia. And I was just
Hmm.
listening to some debates. I think Smriti Irani said something on Parliament that it's not needed,
Hmm.
and the way it was normalized in Jakarta, right, the country of Jakarta, it's mandated by the
Hmm.
government. And that sort of led me into bringing in period leaves in the company, because it was so normal there and it's so not normal here. This felt weird,
Hmm.
right? That's something that really pleasantly surprised me. But yeah, over to you. I'm sure there are many, many such learnings we can at least think about in an Indian context and learn.
So yeah, one of the biggest differences and one of the pleasant differences in Southeast Asia, especially Singapore, uh, Philippines, and not so much Jakarta, but Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, one of these countries, uh, is the value of time.
Mm.
Time management, overall ability to manage your time, valuing each other's time, it is very, very pronounced. Like, for example, again in India, also different cities react to it in different ways. In Delhi, Gurgaon, it is all right, absolutely normal to be 15 minutes late to a meeting. In Mumbai, for example, 5 minutes is acceptable. In Bangalore, around half an hour is absolutely fine. Right? In Chennai, more than a minute late means something drastic has happened. Like, I mean, I see a lot of similarity around the ways of working in the Southeast Asian countries and how people work in Chennai. Uh, that's one thing. So one good thing that I see in Southeast Asia and across Asia is the value that people give to one's own time and each other's time, right? And that is where a lot of conversation around work-life balance and all of these things are eliminated. Like in India today, at least for the generation that who are starting to work, work-life balance is a big deal. When I started working, or probably you started working, we did not really hear the concept of work-life balance at all. There was work, and that's it. That was life, right? So work-life balance is a big thing, and people are okay about talking about work-life balance, and people are not expected to work. beyond their time. So people value each other's private time, or people value others' personal time. That is, I mean, that is something that we can learn, both as an organization and a country, from Southeast Asia. Right? Like, it's a big deal to call someone over a holiday, or during a holiday, or I mean, weekend or something like that. Right? I have an interesting experience around that. Right? So I ended up calling someone on the National Day of Singapore, right, for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever, during that day. Uh, as a countermeasure, I was made to sit out of that person's office on Indian Independence Day. So yeah, that's how it is, right? So, and interestingly enough, Singapore Independence Day or National Day and Indian Independence Day are just 7 days apart, or 6 days apart, 9th of August and 15th of August, right? So, so those things are there. So they are very particular about, uh, I mean, time. That is a very good thing. The other good thing that I feel, and in India, it is viewed with a sense of machoism, I would say. Uh, in Southeast Asia, it is just a norm. My word is my bond,
Mm.
right? So whatever people commit more than whatever there is in a contract or an agreement or whatever you say as your word or as a commitment, I mean, people take it at face value. It doesn't matter what is written in the document. Your word is your bond. That's a very nice thing. Is what I felt. In India, that is something that, I mean, we were known for that sort of behavior. We somewhere have, I don't know, lost it. Uh, we uh, are not so true to ourselves or true to our commitments in terms of what we speak and what we say all the time. What is interesting and what I feel is good uh, in India, and in terms of, and of course, openness is something that you spoke about. Yes, transparency and openness is very much pronounced there as opposed to India. People are okay to talk about sensitive topics. People are okay to talk about religion. People are okay to talk about other things. Like in Jakarta, for example, Friday second half is off. Like, you're not supposed
Mm.
to work that, and
Mm.
it is okay. Everybody is okay with that. Uh, Here, people will form judgments if you are not working on a Friday second half, right?
Mm.
So that, obviously, these aspects are there: transparency, value for time, openness, being true to your word. In terms of what, uh, I mean, we are doing well as Indians. Adoption of technology, I think we are quite ahead in terms of what we have done. I'm not talking about HR technology. I'm talking about
Mhm.
technology in general. I feel, as a nation, have uh, done a lot, or adopted a lot in terms of technology, which is fairly rare in anywhere in the world, let alone Southeast Asia. And I would say Southeast Asia is still better off than rest of the world. Like UPI, for example, is not something that I've seen anywhere. Yes, NFC-based payments are there, but the security associated with UPI, uh, how our entire COVID vaccination, this thing was handled. And I have not visited any other country where you have a QR code to say that you are vaccinated, right? And all your details will come in. So, adoption of technology, definitely, we are doing better than most countries in the world, is what I would say. But otherwise, more human aspects of things, there is a lot of things that we can learn from.
Cool. All right, Soham, this was really informative. Thank you for your time, and
Absolutely,
thanks for sharing all the info, man. Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care.